Josh Pate says Oregon winning the Big Ten would embarrass the Big Ten. Yeah, we got to unpack that.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Another decommitment in 2025. It's not all bad news. It's just not the best news. We'll talk about that and games that Oregon fans should have on their radars to travel to in the coming years. All coming up on today's show. But Josh Pate, CBS Sports 24/7. I think he does a great job covering college football. It doesn't mean every opinion he has is correct, but many of you don't think every opinion I have is correct or good, so that's just the way that it is. He said recently on his show that if Oregon went into the Big Ten, it would be an embarrassing look for the league. Now, I think this is a wrong-headed take on two fronts. Number one, the implication is that Oregon has never been able, if you just take that statement at face value, to get to the Big Ten's level. And if Oregon then goes in and wins the Big Ten, it's a testament to how the Big Ten is falling down. That Oregon's going up, but that they've come down to Oregon's level. Or that Oregon's best has never been better than the Big Ten's best. Or that Oregon has never been a top-tier team in the Big Ten, or they wouldn't have been all these years. I don't agree with that particular notion. But the second point I think is important to examine with this particular comment is that I don't think he intended this as a shot at Oregon. I got a comment from several of you about this particular segment and what he had said. And my reaction when I heard the clip live and in the entire context was not that he thinks that Oregon is not as good or that Oregon hasn't been able to play with, Big Ten teams over the years. Of course, the last time they played the Big Ten team, Ohio State, in 2021, they went into Columbus and won, and Kayvon Thibodeau and Justin Flo didn't even play in that football game, and Anthony Brown was the quarterback. Now, is that the best Ohio State team ever? No, but we know it wasn't the best Oregon team ever. So I think the way that Pate intended the comment, the way that I interpreted it, was if Oregon goes into the Big Ten, it'll be a point of negative pride for those who are massive Big Ten defenders, who look down upon the way the Pac-12 and the West Coast has played football for a very, very long time. Now, there's plenty of merit to the notion that the Big Ten has played a more physical style of football. In the last two national championship games that the Pac-12 made, Washington this past year, Oregon back in the 2014-15 season, they played the opposite teams of the game, Ohio State and Michigan, ironically, and both teams lost. Both teams were outgained on the ground. That is not a coincidence. That is a testament. That is a feather in the cap of what the Big Ten has been for many, many years. But the other reason I was definitely paying attention to this comment, not just because some of you brought it to my attention, but I'd seen it floating around, and when I heard it, it just sounded a little bit off, is in what way, if you're a Big Ten fan, athletic director, coach, admin, whoever, media member, if Oregon walks into the league this year and wins the Big Ten, why would that be an embarrassing feeling for the Big Ten? You have the program that has recruited at the highest level over the last 5 to 10 years out west, coming into your league, acquiring talent at a level that they have not done before. And if they win the conference in year one, fresh off a season in which your conference won a national championship, all that says about your league is that you are inching closer to the SEC. That Oregon coming in and winning is a testament to, hey, look how good this league has been. They just produced a national champion and a playoff team, at least won 3 years in a row. And now there's this team here. I don't think it's the Big Ten can't keep up with Oregon. It's no, Oregon can play at the highest level of the Big Ten, and you've got a perennial conference and national title contender that you have to contend with here. So those were kind of my immediate takeaways from that particular statement on Pate's show. And one of you that sent in a question was Steven. And a reminder, the mailbag is always open. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext. Link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch the show. Free 14-day trial. Steven said, hey, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show on Josh Pate's take on if Oregon wins the Big Ten. He did say Oregon is a very good team, but wasn't disparaging Oregon. He did say the Big Ten would feel embarrassed if Oregon won. Big Ten has spent years talking about how they're the best with the SEC. And for year one, an ex-Pac-12 member wins the conference, the worst quote-unquote Power 5 conference. I don't think anybody would have said that about the Pac-12 last year. I've been tired of all the Pac-12 disrespect for decades, you and me both. In words of Warren G. and Nate Dogg, it's time to mount up. Oregon wins the Big Ten. Stanford wins the ACC. Not quite. Utah wins the Big 12. That's possible. Oregon State wins the Pac-12. Not possible. Let's go. So there won't be a Pac-12 championship this year. Oregon State and Washington State have a scheduling alliance with the Mountain West, and they will play 7 Mountain West teams, 4 Power 4 teams, including each other, and then 1 FCS game. But they are not going to play a conference championship because that wouldn't really have a lot of merit to it. So the de facto Pac-12 championship will be in, I think it's November, when Washington State travels to Corvallis to play Oregon State. Should be a really good game. Utah could win the Big 12. Stanford's not winning the ACC. But to the point that you raised, I'm glad that you agree. Not everybody did, and that's okay. But I hope it'll make sense now that I don't think this was Josh Pate taking a shot at Oregon, saying, oh, they weren't any good. I think it'd be a misconception from Big Ten folks to say Oregon coming in, that's a blight on their league. I think it would help demonstrate that the Big Ten is getting to the level of the SEC, where they have these conference title contenders, but now you bring another one into the fold. And I think it's especially true for the Big Ten because they've been a very top-heavy league. It's kind of the worst kept secret in college football. The Big Ten has been incredibly top heavy. Now those teams at the top at the highest level of the sport. We've seen that consistently. But once you get to the middle and once you get to the bottom, not really looking all that different from the other leagues. But the top heavy nature of it, those are the teams that get talked about the most, that get the most attention, that win the highest profile games and all that sort of stuff. That is perfectly good and fine. But if you introduce another team that is capable of winning a conference championship, then you are elevating the profile of the Big Ten. That's what Oregon can bring into the equation. So if you're the Big Ten and you're more of a traditionalist, or you didn't want Oregon in the league, USC, or USC not a Big Ten team, of course, but I think it's pretty well documented they didn't really want Oregon to come with them to the Big Ten, but Oregon and Washington are here anyway. Like B-movie. The bee, of course, flies anyway. So I think if you're the Big Ten and you actually want to play the game of how do we catch the SEC? How do we be on the SEC's level and be as good or better than that conference? You need Oregon to be great. Simple point blank end of discussion. This has been an Ohio State and Michigan league. The last non-team of those two to win it, correct me if I'm wrong, was Penn State all the way back in 2016. It's been Ohio State and Ohio State and Ohio State and Ohio State and then Michigan and Michigan and Michigan. And, sure, Wisconsin's made a championship game here and there. Iowa gets there, but they haven't been at that same level. So if Oregon comes in and wins the Big Ten year one, you now go at the very least immediately from this is a 2-horse race for a conference championship to this is a 3-horse perennial race for a conference championship. So appreciate the question. We've got more to get to on today's show because, well, it's a Monday. There are always things to discuss. I spent the weekend thinking about what am I going to talk about on Monday's show. And Oregon had decommitment. Again, it's not great news, but all hope is not lost. We'll talk about that next. After, of course, we talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. They've got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, and you'll always find exactly where you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Fun fact, this cup has never until today, or this style of cup, been used on this show before for a second segment sip. So, Oregon's latest decommitment is another blue chip prospect. It was Desan Brame going to Tennessee. It was then Josiah Sharma going to Texas, and now Isaiah Mozee, long rumored to be a flip candidate. He has flipped to Nebraska. Now, this is not great news for the Ducks. However, all hope is not lost. Quite the opposite. The Ducks are still the most loaded at the wide receiver position they have ever been in my lifetime. The level of high-end talent they have this year, potential returners for next year. Remember, Gary Bryant Jr. and Evan Stewart can choose to come back to Oregon. I'd be surprised if two of them are back, as in both, probably a better way to phrase that. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is back. Just saying. And then you look at the way they've recruited this position in the last couple of years. It has been the single most elevated position on the recruiting trail over the last several cycles under the Dan Lanning administration with Junior Adams as the wide receiver coach. He is one of the highest paid position coaches on the staff, and I would think in the conference as well, and he should be. He has earned a tremendous track record recruiting, development, production. Those are the three aspects that you look for when evaluating a position coach. He's knocking them all out of the park. Just had 2,000-yard receivers at a program that hadn't seen a 1,000-yard receiver in 5 seasons. That's not bad. that's not bad. Tez Johnson, by the way, preseason watch list for the Biletnikoff Award, as he should be. I think that'll probably be Oregon's leading receiver this season. But the reason I say it's not the best news that Isaiah Mozee decommitted is twofold. Number one, he's a good player. Okay, he's capable of being a good football player, and you don't like to lose those sorts of guys, even if you have a bunch of other talent stacked up. Is this a disaster for Oregon's receiver room? No, it certainly is not. The depth is there. I'll go into that more in just a moment. But number two, here is my least favorite part of talking about recruiting. When a player decommits from your school, the only sort of negative comments or silver lining remarks you tend to, not the only ones, but one that pops up a lot is, he wasn't actually any good. The worst time for Oregon fans with that particular storyline was Dante Moore. Oh, we didn't want Dante Moore. No, we didn't. No, we wanted Dante Moore. Turns out Oregon ends up getting Dante Moore eventually, and a more experienced version, and that's going to work out the best for everybody. But again, when a guy decommits, he doesn't stop being a talented player. Isaiah Mozee's recruiting ranking is not plummeted, and that's why he chose to flip to Nebraska. It turns out that they have a really promising young quarterback who I think could have a solid season this year and be poised for a massive sophomore campaign in Lincoln, in which they'll be coming off a winning season. I fully anticipate Nebraska to be an 8-9 win team this year. They have a really favorable schedule. The program has an upward trajectory. He might see a quicker route to playing time because the weapons that they have over there in Lincoln are not as prolific as, say, what you have at Oregon. So I don't know if that played a factor. It absolutely could have. Could Mozee have competed for playing time with a guy like Cooper Perry or Dallas Wilson? Sure. Why not? Is Wilson a higher rated recruit? Yeah, he is. But Mozee was a top-ranked guy, the top-ranked receiver in the state of Missouri, one of the top overall recruits in the state. Oregon was excited to get him. You can be disappointed to lose him without going, DEFCON 5 and say, oh my gosh, recruiting is in a free fall. That, of course, isn't the case. And with regards to the recruiting rankings, Oregon has now fallen 9th in the composite on 24/7 Sports. They were up to 6th after the Trey McNutt commitment, and that commitment from a ranking standpoint looking even bigger because Oregon is trying to do what they've never done before, and that's string together 3 consecutive top 10 recruiting classes. And that Trey McNutt commitment, I talked about the importance of it last week on the show, continues to look more and more important along those lines. But Is losing Isaiah Mozee a bummer? Yeah. When I watched him, I saw a guy who could be a player in Oregon's offense, who can be a good receiver at the high-end college ranks. Wish him all the best in Nebraska. The wide receiver position, though, is still really, really stacked. So in the 2025 class alone, you've got Decorian Moore, who is the number one wide receiver in the country. And though I like Mozee, if you ask me, would I rather have Decorian Moore, who committed back in early July, or keep Isaiah Mozee, that's a no-brainer, okay? Decorian Moore is an instant impact game changer. Mozee probably doesn't play a ton as a true freshman, but by a redshirt freshman or sophomore season, yeah, absolutely could have been a contributor to the offense. But Decorian Moore is an instant impact sort of guy. They also have Dallas Wilson, who is a composite 5-star. They also have Cooper Perry, who's a big-time receiver recruit coming out of the state of Arizona. So this receiver class in 2025 is still really stacked. And then you think about what Oregon brought in the 24 class, and you realize, yeah, you lose a body. You never want to do that. But is this position group suddenly void of talent? Nope, quite the opposite. Because the 2024 class had Jeremiah McLaughlin, who they flipped from Ohio State, Ryan Pelham, who they flipped from USC, Dylan Gresham, who's a 4-star, Gatlin Bear, who doesn't arrive till 2026, but is a 5-star recruit, and Jack Ressler, who's, just a 3-star from Mater Dei High School, ho-hum program down there. And he has got high-end speed, made a big play in the spring game, catching a ball from, I believe, it was Luke Moga. So the talent is there. If one of Gary Bryant Jr. or Evan Stewart returns, you'll have a veteran presence. Otherwise, you'll be working in a whole new lineup of wide receivers. Maybe they bring in a transfer, but Kyler Casper will be going into his 4th year of college football. Jerion Dickey will be going into his 3rd year of college football in 2025. Decorian Moore will be an instant impact guy. McClellan is someone who I think can have a really, really nice career with the Ducks. They've got plenty of talent at the wide receiver position. But the recruiting ranking falls down to number 9. Oregon's still got several names out there. And it continues to be obvious with the 3 blue chip decommitments that have taken place within the last month or so. Let's see, August, around a month or so, 3 weeks, that Oregon can still get a top 5 class. You saw that jump 5 spots when you landed a 5-star in Trey McNutt. If they get a Jonah Williams, for instance, or if they get a Michael Terry III, then who, as I'm recording the show, neither one is committed. I don't know that either are expected to, or anytime soon anyway. And you can just make such a big jump. You can make a big jump. You're only 2 players away from getting inside the top 5. I think with the 3 blue chip decommitments, though, what you can ensure is Oregon will not get the number 1 class in 2025, which for a minute there was entirely plausible. But is that going to happen? No. Is that the end of the world? Also no. You string together top 10 classes, and I think you've accumulated the level of high school talent that national championship teams have been doing for the last 5-10 years or so. So that's everything on Isaiah Mozee, at least that I've got. If you got any questions or anything, by all means, let me know. Quick thought before we get to a fun topic to end today's show. This whole That Team Out West campaign that Oregon's rolling out, the Hard Knocks video that is available on YouTube or Twitter to watch, it's about half an hour long. I'm going to surprise you with this one. Scott Anderson has knocked it out of the park. That dude, whoo, man, he's good. He and everybody else, I'm sure he's not doing that alone. They're rock stars. It's so great. It's fantastic to watch. But online, you'll see some negative takes on, Oregon's just trying to, coin the term That Team Out West to make themselves seem like something they're not, and they're just trying to blah. Honest take, I don't have a strong reaction to it. If Oregon's manufacturing it, I think it's partially promote their documentary series of everything that's detailing fall camp, and partially because, they want to get on people's radar. And they don't mind if they upset a few folks along the way. And if you think it's annoying that Oregon's trying to call themselves That Team Out West, fine. You don't have to call Oregon That Team Out West. It's still what the documentary series is going to be called. So I think those two things went in conjunction. And this idea, this is what I found most hilarious about the entire Twitter, if you want to even call it a debacle or just narrative as it was flying around over the weekend, was the idea that Oregon is somehow in need of attention. Like, we need you to call us that team out west, or else no one's going to know who we are. Like, no, it's the Oregon Ducks. It's Stan Lanning. Everybody knows. The guys with the giant inflatable duck at media days. The guys whose mascot is just hanging on the fence and going to every stadium in the Big Ten. That's everybody knows. Love it, hate it, leave it, don't care. But everybody knows. This is not some big, massive, desperate, we need the attention and whatnot. Like, I've talked on this show before this whole thing got started and whatnot. I've talked on this show before about the potential of Oregon, Ohio State becoming a legitimate rivalry in the Big Ten. All the ingredients are there. You just need time. And you know what? Maybe a little disdain of, we're not going to call you that team out west. And Oregon saying that or whatnot. Maybe that's just a little kindling for the fire. So this concludes segment number 2. But guess what? We have 3 segments on today's show. That's how we roll here at Locked On. Good information for fans who like to travel to Oregon games. That be coming up next. Coming up right now is FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and just baseball is going on right now. But football's right around the corner. But still, the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going post-Olympics whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. If you want to bet Oregon games, they're there. Yeah, that's true. They're all, not all of them yet. They will be throughout the course of the year. You can bet their win total, national title odds, Big Ten title odds, whatever you want. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer and what is left of your summer. FanDuel.com, that's the place to go. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We're back into the mailbag here. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlinCFB or at Locked On Ducks. If you want priority access and a bunch of other perks, you go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below. Wherever you listen to or watch this show, free 14-day trial. This question came from that community, hence why it goes first in the segment. So I was looking at Oregon's schedule and what games are closest to me here in Wyoming. Not many options. Fact check true. But it got me thinking, if I was going to see Oregon on a road game that wasn't a bowl game, what would my ultimate game be? And I think a real possibility now is if Oregon played at Penn State during the whiteout game, what's your Ducks road game bucket list? Well, Ohio State has to be near the top of that list. A Penn State whiteout, you can readily make the case it could be above Ohio State for 2 reasons. One, in my lifetime, Oregon has not been to Penn State before. And since the whiteout really became the spectacle that it is, gosh, Oregon's uniforms, I mean the Generation O and everything they've been coming out with, gosh, I think it all looks great. I think the uniforms look awesome. You give me those kind of green, modern version of the retros that they displayed last year in the Fiesta Bowl and first against Washington State against a Penn State whiteout. It's going to look really good on TV. Really, really good on TV. A Penn State whiteout, though, is a top 5 environment. A lot of people would have it as the number 1 environment in all of college football. And it's hard to disagree with that particular notion. So I'd have that one at the top of your list. Going to Ohio State, going to Michigan, if you're going to put in the time to travel, those are the games. I would have Wisconsin as a close 4th to Michigan. And one of the reasons is, number one, Oregon's had great success against Wisconsin over the years in the Rose Bowl, so I've always had a positive feeling towards the Badgers for that particular reason. But Frank Kaminsky, though, that guy was really, really good. I'm pretty sure Oregon lost them in the NCAA tournament once upon a time many moons ago. But last time when they played in the NCAA tournament, Oregon won with Kenny Wooten and Lou King and Peyton Pritchard. So going to Wisconsin, also a great environment. And they have a tradition similar to what Oregon has with Shout. They do jump around at the end of the third quarter. And seeing that in person has got to be worth it. So I might actually put Wisconsin above Michigan just for that reason. Because those are the sorts of things that I nerd out for as a college football fan. and I'm sure many of you do as well. And I know as an Oregon fan who loves shouting at Autzen Stadium over the years, you can come to appreciate that. So I'd have Wisconsin really high on that list. I'd put Ohio State second because the magnitude of that game, I mean, October 12th is going to be humongous. And there are going to be a lot of seasons where Oregon going to Columbus is going to be a massive game. But I would have Wisconsin really high on that list. I think Penn State's the best environment that you'll see. Ohio State would be the biggest game. And then I'd go to Wisconsin because they've got the best tradition. But Michigan is on there. Those would be ones that I'd advise you going to. As for me personally, my road game bucket list, I have not been to a Civil War at Corvallis. I'd probably need to put that on my list. I don't know that it's at the tippy top, but that'd be up there. I've been to Washington, Oregon games at Husky Stadium before, at least one, with Vernon Adams back in 2015. Bucket list games. I mean, the whiteout at Penn State, that's on there. I want to see Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech. That's fantastic. Any SEC game that has a big feel to it, like Oregon not being in the game. I'm talking Georgia, Tennessee in Knoxville, or Bama, Tennessee in Knoxville 2022. I want to see that sort of environment. Have not been to an SEC stadium before. Someday I would absolutely love to change that. So that's kind of where my bucket list items would be. But I've had the privilege of seeing a lot, and a national championship in person as well. But I've seen a college football playoff semifinal game. I've seen a standalone Rose Bowl game. I've had the privilege to see a lot of college football games over the years. But love that question. But if you're an Oregon fan, you're thinking, what game should I try to go to? When you see at Penn State or at Wisconsin on the schedule, go. Absolutely go. This year, Oregon goes at Ann Arbor to play Michigan and at Madison to play Wisconsin. Highly encourage you to go to those games if you can. It's going to be fantastic. This question from Nick. So Oregon is an extremely confident, almost cocky team right now. For the record, I understand why, as do I. Question, with how hyped in themselves they are and almost cocky as a program, do you have confidence they'll stand strong when they get punched in the mouth the first time? Well, I think what you're referring to here, Nick, is more confidence amongst the fan base. When you talk to players, they will give you coach speak answers with regards to the hype, the expectation, conference title, national championship, all that sort of stuff. I think they're not just told to say that. I think they have been coached to believe that. Where they don't listen to the hype and say, oh, we're the greatest thing ever. No, there's a difference between knowing internally that you're good enough to play at the highest level of the sport and other people telling you that you're good enough to play at the highest level of the sport. I know, and many of you know, Oregon can compete for a national championship this season. But that's not why there's a belief in the locker room and amongst the coaching staff that they can do it. Now, do they hear outside noise? They listen to it more than they would probably admit. You can't hear none of it in today's world. It's just not possible unless you are a literal dinosaur with technology. But if you're the Oregon players and you hear that sort of stuff, you can't let the good stuff get to you, just like you can't let the bad stuff get to you. If you have an off game and people are roasting you on Twitter, you have to be able to overlook that just as much as you have a good game. You're Dylan Gabriel and he goes out against Oregon State, let's say, and he goes for 350, 5 touchdowns and no picks, and people say Dylan Gabriel for Heisman. He can't let that go to his head either, because what his coaches are telling him and what he needs to think. I can still be better. How can I improve? What did I do wrong on this play or that snap or this drive? Why did we stall out here or whatnot? And I think that's the approach that these guys have. So I think that there are plenty of Oregon fans that are confident, bordering on cocky. I'm confident in Oregon. I don't think I'm cocky about it. Maybe some people feel that way. It's fine. You think whatever you like. I don't really care. But I'm confident what Oregon is capable of accomplishing this year. And I think they know, and because they came so close to playing at the highest level last year, at the end of the season, they know what it takes to get there and why, to your question, when they get punched in the mouth for the first time, will they respond? Yeah, they will. And that's why having senior veteran leadership is really, really important. I want to get out here on this note. For 2027 and 28, the Big Ten announced that their men's and women's basketball tournaments are going to be in Las Vegas. I think this is great news for Duck fans because I was talking about the travel schedule and road games you should try to go to earlier in this segment, and I stand by that. However, do I support the Big Ten every now and then throwing West Coast fans a bone and giving them high-level games to go to that are easily accessible compared to the road trips that they're currently going to have to take to go to some of the games? Yes, absolutely. I am on board with that. And so that caught my eye and just wanted to share. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you for making this your first listen. Go make Locked On College Football your second. I've got you covered over there. Yes, me, myself, and I, along with a running lineup of fantastic guests, keeping you up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.